Hi there, welcome or welcome back to my channel. This video is all about preparing beds for spring planting. Now, of course, if you're using raised beds that you used last year, you're going to use those beds again to plant this year's crops. So how do you get those beds ready and make sure that they are ready to grow, nice. How do you make sure that those beds are ready to grow strong and healthy crops for the upcoming season? So I do a few different things to get my beds ready for the spring. None of them is anything that's way too difficult or anything like that, but just so that I can have the greatest likelihood for success this season. The first thing that I'm going to do after I've removed all of the plants, which I've already done already, well, all the main plants, I have some weeds in there I got to pick out, but the first thing I'm going to do is do a soil drench. And the reason I'm going to do the soil drench is because I had a few pest problems last year that I want to help kind of minimize for this year. My main pest that I had in my garden last year, I had some aphids, but the biggest ones were the squash bugs. And they didn't just get my squash, but they were kind of all over. Now, and so I want to make sure that that infestation, rather than getting worse over time, actually I can, help to minimize those bugs. So what the soil drench will do is it will kill the eggs that overwinter in the soil and then hatch to wreak havoc on your garden in the spring. Yeah, it's going to kill those eggs in the soil so that there won't be many left for the next season. And so in my soil drench, I am going to use the main ingredient is neem oil. This is great for killing those insect eggs. And of course, it's organic, natural. So I'm using cold pressed neem oil. I'm using a little bit of peppermint oil because this also irritates soft-bodied insects and also is a great deterrent for rodents. However, using it out in the open like this, the smell isn't going to last that long. And then I'm also using orange oil. I'm using orange oil in my soil drench because I've also had an ant problem. Like, this is Texas, so ants are everywhere. In the past couple of years, especially this past season and this season, ants have been out of control. My soil will be fine, and then the next day I've got an ant bed in the middle of a raised bed. So I am trying to minimize, I've seen a few in this bed, so I want to just minimize those. The orange oil mixture actually kills them on contact. Well, maybe not on contact, but it might take a few minutes, but I've eradicated entire ant beds with orange oil and water. So I'm putting all three of these ingredients together to do a soil drench. Now, I do know that the orange oil does irritate earthworms somewhat. I've seen them crawl out when I've used it. So I'm not going to put a ton in there, but I didn't see them necessarily die. They just kind of crawled out to get away from it, and maybe they go back in. Fingers crossed. But I'm not going to drench the soil, like only a few inches deep, so that earthworms that are a little further down will be just fine. Now, I do believe that this might kill earthworm eggs, but earthworms lay eggs all the time. It's not just over winter, so it won't eradicate it won't completely decimate the population of earthworms if some of them are harmed. So that's one of those things with garden pest control. You kind of have pros and cons. Every decision that you make is going to do something to the balance in the ecosystem, so you have to kind of give and take when you need to. And because the squash bugs were so prevalent last year and they did so much damage, I think it's worth it to kind of take this chance to handle the squash bugs and also the fire ants, because they make it really difficult for me to harvest my crops and be in my raised beds. So do a little bit now so that hopefully there won't be a ton of them during the season and I don't have to use a ton of sprays and things like that to keep them under control. So I'm just gonna, to make this mixture, I'm just gonna use this bucket and pour in my ingredients. And then, of course, oils do not just mix with waters. You need an emulsifier, and so I'm using a little bit of Dawn dish soap. Castile soap is also a really good option because it's super mild. I don't have any of that right now. I have Dawn, so that's what I'm going to use. And it's Dawn also kills ants, I've seen. So that's also a good thing, too. So I'll get these guys mixed together, and then I will drench the soil in the bed. Hi there, so it's been a few days since I treated the raised bed behind me with my neem oil, orange oil, peppermint oil mixture in order to help kill some of those insect eggs that may be lingering in the soil from last season. So the next step to preparing this bed is to remove any and all weeds or grasses that are coming up, because it's just inevitable that some of them are going to end up in there. So remove all those. Now technically I could have done that before, but the next step is to remove all of those, make sure it's clean from there, and then to top it with compost. So now I've pulled up the grass. I also took my rake, as you saw, and kind of scraped over the mulch layer. Last year I did the absolute most with mulch. It was my first year really using it throughout the garden, and I laid it on thick, and I'm really happy about that because it was excellent at helping to keep the plants moist and also helping to keep the weeds away. So some of that mulch has broken down. Okay, there are wasps flying around, sorry y'all. Some of that mulch has broken down, but some of it is still in pretty large pieces. And so I don't want to bury that because, one, I can use it again as mulch this year and not have to add as much. And two, because as it's breaking down, it does take nitrogen from the soil, and once it's broken down, it begins to add it. But that process of breaking down can rob some of the nitrogen from my plants. So I don't really want a bunch of big breaking down particles in the soil where my plants are growing. So I scraped that over to the side. It also helped me to see some other grass and weeds that I hadn't quite gotten. So clean that up, move that mulch to the side, and then I'm gonna lay down my compost and then spread the mulch back over, and then get the side where the mulch is, lay down compost there as well, and then just spread out the mulch, and I'll plant my plants into that whenever it's time to do that. But yeah, so cleaned out the weeds, I treated the bed. Remember, treating the bed is optional, but since I had such a big challenge with those squash bugs, I decided to treat it. And now, next step, let's get this compost laid. Okay, so that is about it. Now, just an update. The compost that I use a brand that's from an actual company out here. It has a few different locations where they make compost on site, and then they sell it bagged or by the cubic yard, you know, if you have a truck. And so I buy their bagged compost, and it's way cheaper than what you're gonna find in the big box stores. Now, fortunately for me, I went out there because I bought some a few months ago when I was planting out my cool weather stuff and when I was planting out my onions. And then I went back to get some for my summer garden, and they were out, but I found out they also sold theirs to local Lowe's stores, and I found some at Lowe's, so that made me really happy, the same brand and the locally made compost. But it's way cheaper than some of the name brands that you'll find out there, or some of the ones that you more commonly find in the big box stores. So definitely shop around for compost. I know I've said this in videos before, but because it is so expensive, if you're not making it, and if you don't know what to look for, I live in North Texas, right outside of Dallas, and I paid $4 for a 2 cubic foot bag. And that was less than half of what I paid last year. Last year I was paying like $5 for 1 cubic foot. So definitely shop around, look up compost suppliers, call them, find out if they sell it bagged, and you'll probably save money on compost. Now for this bed, I used 4 cubic feet. This is a 4x8 raised bed that I just updated. So it's a 4x8 raised bed. I topped it with 4 cubic feet of compost, so 2 cubic foot bags. So for me, that cost $8. And then if you saw me mix in something out of a red cup, it's this. These are alfalfa pellets, and as you know, they're, you know, use them to feed like horses, I think, but they also are a great organic fertilizer, and they're pretty low. I want to say it's like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. I'll put the amount on the screen once I look it up, but they are a really good fertilizer to add to the soil. And I haven't actually ever used them, but I had heard of them. And then I have a friend who moved from a house to an apartment, so she's no longer able to do a big garden, and she had a big bag of them and gave them to me. And I just remembered I had them, so I want to mix them into the soil. Because I will be using fertilizer when I first plant my plants. I'm a big fan of the granular slow release fertilizer, so I don't have to come out and fertilize so frequently. I can just do it every 4 to 6 weeks. So mixing in this low potency slow release fertilizer right now is just perfect, because it just enriches the soil a little bit, and I don't have to worry about over fertilizing them because it's not anything really heavy. So I have 4 more beds to get ready for spring planting, so I'm going to continue on that, but I'm going to use the exact same process that I did here. This bed that I prepared, it's actually for my peppers and eggplant. So mostly peppers, I want to say like 20 pepper plants and like 3 eggplant, and then I'm also on the edge going to build a little trellis and grow some green beans on one of the 4-foot edges. I haven't exactly worked out the semantics of that trellis, but once I do, I'll show you guys. But yeah, and then I'm gonna grow some green beans on that. But otherwise, I'll be planting my peppers in it this weekend. So today's Friday, so I'll probably plant them either tomorrow or Sunday. And yeah. So thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. I hope you found this content helpful and that it's something that's gonna help you on your gardening journey. Just remember, your garden doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be able to grow your plants and grow your food. And if you're doing that, then you're doing it right. So thanks again for sticking around. Go ahead and click that like, click that subscribe button. Help this video get out to more people. Help me to grow the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And have a great one. So I'll see you again. Bye.